Okay, we're on. Self-engineering. Wait. I have to have a chair. Okay. Another edition of Justin's Lighthouse Thursday Night Family Group. April 21st? 20th. Today's April 20th.
Yeah.
Because yesterday was 19th. Did you watch anything on TV about the bombing? Did they do a moment of silence in the morning?
They had some type of ceremony at some
Down at the
that
site.
church downtown.
Yeah. I just wondered if they were still doing that moment of silence thing.
I don't know.
That is pretty cool. Okay, we can all talk about where we were some other time. It's like, you know, it was my generation's Kennedy assassination. You know, where were you the day of the Oklahoma City bombing? And the fact that we were like here in the city of the bombing is pretty wild. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started because there's people that are watching. Instead of reading out of the Recovery Bible, though, I want to read something because this really fits into what we're going to talk about tonight. This is from the How It Works section in the AA Big Book. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided that you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. Half measures, this is the part that we're going to get into tonight. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. And then it goes into, and here are the steps that we took, which are the 12 steps of AA. Okay, so the half measures avail us nothing. Everybody's heard that term. What do you, when you first heard it, what did it mean to you? How did you receive that? Did it make any sense? Did you think anything about it? First time you heard half measures avail us nothing.
I thought, when I first heard it, I thought you could do anything that's possible. Of course, I didn't understand it when I first heard it, though.
I know I didn't. We, like in the world, we, if I move this chair halfway across the room, then the result is the chair will be halfway across the room. I will see 50% productivity. If I wash half the dishes in the sink, then we'll at least have 50% of the dishes clean. But the point is, the guys that wrote the big book, they understood this about alcoholics, because we tend to, I'll just say half measure. We have a long history of partializing or half measuring just enough to get by. In fact, I've heard people like brag about it, like it's a badge of honor, like really believing, I've heard people say, man, I know right where that line is. I know exactly what I have to do to get by, but nothing more. And so we can adopt this mindset that is not healthy at all. And when it comes to overcoming alcoholism and addiction, We can't be halfway in. We can't half measure it. We can't be willing to, cherry pick. Well, I kind of like this aspect of recovery principles, and this thing over here is kind of interesting, and this one I really enjoy because I get to be around a lot of people, and I love telling my stories and getting validated or whatever. But then there's this other set of things that we just won't do. We might talk about them, we might pretend to be doing them, but we just won't do them because multiple reasons. There's no instant gratification in it. It doesn't satisfy one of those defective needs that we have that we were talking about yesterday. And so what ends up happening is this is why this is titled, online it's titled Pretending in Recovery. On the actual board, it's the illusion of recovery. And the definition of illusion is a thing that is likely to be wrongly perceived or interpreted. And so what we tend to do in recovery, anybody who is like a chronic relapser, we've tried it before, alcohol is no respecter of persons. We either are in our disease, in our addiction, or we're in recovery. There is no gray area, as much as every alcoholic that I know and me personally would love to live in the gray area. We like the gray area because we can manipulate in the gray area. We can say, oh, geez, I didn't mean to do that, but at least I tried, and we can kind of live in this vague world, never recognizing that the results are nil. So if we half measure recovery, we don't get half back. We get nothing back. We get drunk. We get high. But even before that, we get our anxiety back. We get our misery back. You remember all the stages that lead to relapse. We relapse long before we drink or use again. We relapse in our emotions. We relapse in our behaviors. We relapse in our outlook. Mental obsessions start coming back. The anxiety comes back. We become more compulsive, more impulsive. And then we drink. Then we use. Half measures avail us nothing. That's not my line. I wish it was. So we have to, one of the most important things we do in recovery is we get willing to rethink old ideas. And we've been talking about a lot of this week, and this survival mode instinct that we've developed over the years. And so it can be hard to break down, because by the time we get to this point in our life and we start hearing, basically everything that you thought you knew about yourself, you have to be willing to reconsider. I forget the girl's name, but she was sitting right there yesterday in our evening group, and she was talking about that. Of course, it's mind blowing. But in the beginning, we're like, no, you don't, no, that's not necessary. Because I know this, and I've done this, and I know all about this, and I've read all about this, and I've experienced all about this, and our thinking is so tight inside this little box. But even that is a half measure. And so the way we break through that mental box, the way we crack the denial, is get honest with ourselves. There's nowhere in the big book or the big book that talks about, I guess the Bible does talk about being honest with others, but the solution, as it relates to recovery, it not in one place does it mention getting honest with other people. That's just not a deal killer. We have to get honest with ourselves, and then we will naturally be honest with others. Because once you get honest with yourself, it's easy to become transparent. We got no more secrets. We got nothing to hide. right? To this day, I mean, and that's a practical thing. There's some tangible things about that. There's some intangible things about this. To this day, for this very reason that I'm talking about, it keeps me sober and honest with myself and transparent. I do not have a password on my phone. And unless I have to, which actually this week, a couple of days ago, my phone made me put a password, but you program it, but 5 people already know it, and of course the computers have passwords, but everybody knows them. I literally have no secrets today. And that's crazy. You would think that was crazy if you read my 4-step. Right? What are we so afraid of? And I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole tonight because that's not really what we're talking about, but it does apply. That's one of our biggest resistance, and you'll see this when we get over to the top right hand of the board where we're getting it into what it means to carry on a double life. We carry on a double life in our own mind. We don't even realize it. And so what we do is even though we're sober, in early recovery, we still tend to go about it the way we've always gone about every experience. Right? We look for the things that interest us. We debate the things that we're unsure of. We question this. We need more information about that. And we try to kind of work our way through to a place where we feel okay. Which is, that's part of that denial. And here's the point. We weren't doing that when we were drinking. Not one time did I ever question the pharmacy on how the pills were made. I need to know the factory specifications. I need, there was no resistance when it comes to using. It's like, I want to get high. How do I get the pills? I want to get drunk. How do I get the alcohol? Right? Nothing gets in our way. So fast forward to recovery, and we're doing it. We're our own worst enemy. We put every possible obstacle we can think of, and a lot of that has to do with the trauma that we were talking about. We're still trying to satisfy these emotional needs versus full-on surrender. Here's the cards on the table. I'm ready to learn. So just because we're sober doesn't mean anything's different yet, right? Until change occurs. And the definition of change is to make or become different. So if you still see the world the same way, you still go about your day pretty much the same way, you still handle problems the same way, you're still thinking the same way, that's not change, that's just sobriety. This is why, and some people can pull that off. We've all been around people that we would refer to as dry drunk. These are not comfortable people. They're not people that are comfortable with themselves. They're sober for 40 years, but you wouldn't really want to spend much time with them because they're a nervous wreck. They're always in a bad mood. They're complaining about everything. They're just grumpy old dudes or whatever, gals. But they hang on to that, but I haven't drank in 40 years. And that's a good thing. But that's not what we're after. We don't want to just be sober. You may actually pull it off. You can be sober, but if we don't actually change, if we don't actually become different, then we're not really going to get a life that we want to live. And that's, I wish I could remember the specific things that that girl was talking about yesterday. It was really powerful because she was speaking along these lines. Surely you guys remember it. How she came to that realization in her own, I just need a little bit of this and I just need a little bit of that. And then, disaster strikes. And then, I just need a little bit of this and I'll be fine. I just, like we talk about all the time. No, I just need to get back to work, get a girl, get a car, get a home, and then I'll be fine. And, we want to put Band-Aids on it. We don't really, and that's denial. We don't really understand the seriousness of the wreckage of our past. And we don't want, that's what's so scary. It's like, I don't want to get into that, so I'm just going to pretend like it's not that big a deal, and I just need to get back to work, get a car, get a girl, get a da-da-da-da-da. So we can fall into the illusion of recovery and not even recognize it. Because remember, like we talk about all the time, addiction is a feelings disease. We, in our survival mode that began at a very young age, between the ages of 8 and 12, we've been in survival mode, which has been based on feelings, emotionally driven, emotionally reasoning. And so we tend to bring the same thing. I mean, of course, you're not going to take, however old you are, I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, but like in my case, I was 38 years old. You're not going to take 38 years of thinking a particular way, seeing the world and everybody in it in a very specific way, which is usually, if you agree with me, you're my friend. If you disagree with me, you're my enemy, and everybody else is out to get me somehow, some way, and eventually, that kind of thinking. That's not going to change in such a short period of time. But, that doesn't mean, oh man, so I'm on the hook until I completely change. No, but if we're willing to implement the recovery principles, new strategies, and then maintain those, then we will be okay as we move forward. People who fail early in recovery are the ones who half measured. Right? That's what we do. We half measure. And the denial is, it'll be okay. I don't read the big book because it's not that big a deal. I just don't see its importance. Or I don't think about it. Or even though, it gets suggested something like, I'm just using that as an example. What are the important things in recovery that we tend not to do? Well, take a shower every day, brush your teeth every day, keep up with your responsibilities, read the big book, start chasing your spirituality. You need to start defining your concept of God and speaking to that God, and alone time and slowing down and all this stuff. But what we'll do is what we do in every other experience up to this point. We look towards the externals. We look toward the things that will satisfy those needs, that need to belong, that need for approval, need for validation, need to feel loved, need to feel safe, need to feel secure, respect, trust, honesty, and even that sense of achievement. That's one of the reasons why we always want to get back to work so fast. It gives us a sense of achievement, not understanding how we've also hidden behind that for so long. Just a little commentary, that's why work programs don't work. We were talking to a guy earlier today, and he was all fired up, man. He was gonna send his, I think, a brother-in-law to the chicken farm. Y'all know about the chicken ranch or chicken farm. Mm-hmm. I've known of many people that went there, and that's not recovery, that's work. If we could just work and also change, we would have already done that. We've never been afraid of work. Work. Okay, so the point is there's a reason that we think the way we think. It's to satisfy those things, those needs. I wasn't thinking about getting back to work when I was, knee deep in, the corner of my bedroom, waking up in my own vomit. I wasn't thinking about work then. It's because when we start to get sober and we start to feel better, all that fear kicks in that, we're not comfortable in the world yet, but it's coming. We will get there. And so we tend to kind of, another way to think of what we're talking about is we tend to want to kind of make our own little recovery program. Right? It's like, well, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I kind of like this, and I really love those 8 o'clock meetings at that one place, and Bob is always there, and I like listening to his stories, and so even even the recovery-oriented decisions that we tend to make for ourselves are for the wrong reasons. You know, we'll come to love going to AA, and I'm not saying anything. You know, you guys know how I feel about all that. AA was really important to me, and we certainly, you know, respect the principles of AA. But those are decisions you guys have to make for you. But don't fiddle with it. Either get all the way in and follow all the suggestions, or don't go because you're just going for the wrong reasons, right? We like the social atmosphere. I love going, and I love stories, and that's not what going to AA is about. But anyway, we can get into that a lot deeper. The point is, and of course we've been talking about this, so you're already aware of paying attention to those little micro decisions that we make throughout the day. Is it really an empowering decision? Is it going to help me become improved? Or am I just satisfying some need? Right? I love the sociability. I love hanging out in the smoke section. I love, you know, it doesn't mean we can't enjoy people's company, but we're all going to die if we don't change. And that is what's required. You know, you talk about really getting honest with ourselves. And, you know, I'll tell you something crazy. This is how strong our denial can be. While I was still before I ever, you know, began my own recovery journey, my little brother died in 1999. Okay, from obviously accidental drug overdose. And I was still using pain pills at that time. And people would tell me, "You're going to end up just like your brother. It's time, you know, you got to get help. You got to get help." "Oh no, I'll be all right." And I used to say the same thing every other addict says. "I know my tolerance level. I'll never overdo it." Well, let me tell you something. That's not how people overdose. They don't exceed their tolerance level. Overdose isn't about tolerance. It has to do with your brainstem. And that's how people can, you know, especially over a period of abstinence, you don't use for a while, and then a person will go back and just barely use, and they die from an overdose, which is what happened to my brother. He was when he was using, he was taking like 30 Lortab a day. So that's how his tolerance had built. But what killed him was only 6. So don't get caught up in that little lie to self. It'll never happen to me because I know my tolerance level. Overdose has nothing to do with tolerance. Okay, so we'll kind of circle back to where we left off. I want to get into some of these specifics because it's really, really powerful. But this is a lot of when we're trying to make our own program. Think about this for a minute. If you can kind of tie in our discussion yesterday. We're talking about externals needing to look good on the outside because it satisfies, my mom's so proud of me. Oh man, my ex says I can start seeing my girl again, and we give a good appearance on the outside. And a lot of it can actually be happening. We're back at work, we're paying our bills, we're doing some good things. And so it does look like it, but we won't sustain it because we're half measuring, or the clinical term is partializing. We're only doing some of the things some of the time. The rest of the things, and we'll get into what these things should be, what is recovery supposed to look like, and as a group we're going to get a lot deeper into it next week, but we'll use recovery to satisfy our basic needs. And I mean, when I say recovery, I'm just talking about an environment or a process of recovery. Maybe of course right now it's one thing, and then as you move forward, you still need to be chasing recovery. So what will that look like? Just in general terms, your treatment plan will come when it comes, but maybe getting back to church is going to be important for you. Maybe you're a Celebrate Recovery person. Maybe you enjoy AA. Maybe you want to try NA. Maybe you're not going to do any of the 12-step stuff, but you need to become a part of, say, a men's accountability group, or something that has to do with people with the same ideas, with the same desires to improve themselves and to become better men. That's what keeps people sober. To become not just better men, I'm talking about more complete. I had that thing on the board and I erased it earlier, and I didn't mean to, but it said, it's better to be consistent than perfect. Well, we've been trying to be perfect. Now all we got to do is just be consistent, and everything, if we're a C+ student most of the time, you're going to have a really nice life. We don't have to get all A's, because when we're trying to get all A's, we end up falling down to D's and F's, and then we just feel horrible, and then we just relapse. Just focus on staying at a C+ to B. But in order to do that, we've got to build a complete foundation. And that is what's always missing. Nobody has ever relapsed who had a good, consistent, complete foundation. Not a perfect one, but a complete one. You've developed at an equal level, on an emotional level, as an equal level on a mental level, on a spiritual level, on a physical level, and then you can even go from there. Even on a social level, we tend to be socially inept. We're afraid of people, so it makes sense that really what we've developed over a lifetime is how to avoid people. We don't tend to be the greatest conversationalists, because it scares us to have conversations with, say, strange people about topics we don't know anything about, for fear of, all this stuff we're talking about. Fear of not getting their approval, fear of not getting validation or feeling like we belong, or praise or trust or respect or any of that stuff. Start paying attention, even in your, or not even, but particularly in the things that you do on a daily basis, which usually has come from a suggestion, something that you've learned that is important. The things that you actually do, pay attention to your thinking about it. Am I doing it and getting the full weight out of it, or am I doing it because it will look good on paper, so to speak? We always say, people who have to get reports written, like for legal stuff, it can be very challenging, because especially if it's their first go around, you probably experienced that too early on. We just want to get that paper signed. We went to that AA meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was like, and I was kind of looking around the room, not in a judgmental sort of way, just noticing, just observing. And there was that one guy, he could barely speak English, but he couldn't wait to talk. I mean, he was just ready to unload. And then he was like, oh, but I also have this paper I need to get signed. And I thought, that's cool. That guy's chasing recovery. But so many others weren't paying any attention to the discussion, just smoking. They probably went through 6 cigarettes. It was a smokers meeting. Probably went through 6 cigarettes in less than an hour, just watching the clock, waiting for it to end, and then at the end of the meeting, who's going to sign my paper? Who's going to sign my paper? Well, those people aren't going to make it. That's not an opinion. That's not how we make it. And the thing about recovery is just as addiction is predictable, recovery is absolutely 100% predictable. If we'll do the things that are laid out before us in a complete way, not in a perfect way, but in a complete and consistent way, you will change. That's it. You will become a new person. You like we were talking about with some of the girls last night. You will become the person you were created to be. That guy that maybe you've even fantasized about, that guy that is in there. And all we got to do is quit thinking, quit cherry picking, quit, and surrender. But if it was that easy, we could probably figure out a way to bottle it, or I could just write like a 10-page manual and just hand it out on the street corner. Don't discount your level of resistance, and that is a tragedy of recovery. It doesn't have to take, but it does so long, but it does because we're coming out of survival mode, right? And so we want to hold our cards close to the vest, and we're suspicious of this, and I don't know about that, but that's why step one is so important. If you really recognize how unmanageable your own life had become, what are we waiting for? And people would tell me that, I could understand that on an intellectual level, but I just had this internal, no, I just need to understand more. I just need to understand more. Well, so you're like an expert in the drug world? Well, no. Well, but you used for 20 years. What do you mean? You didn't need to know anything about that? And the whole point of this is, we get wonderful advice from people who've been where we've been, and they're already living their lives, right? They've done it. They've made their changes. They've done their surrendering, and they're just giving us good advice, and we want to debate them, right? It's that old adage, don't take advice about plumbing from an electrician. It's like, what do we know about living the life that we want to live? It could be so much smoother if we just, and by the way, that's one of the suggestions in AA. If we could just follow suggestions from, say, in our case, men who are already living a kind of life that we would like. And I'm not talking about lifestyle. I'm not talking about, I want to be able to live in that house and that car. I'm talking about men who are balanced, men who are consistent, men who are trustworthy, men who are honest with themselves, men who are humble, men who can solve some problems, pretty much can solve any problem because they humbly learned one of the most important things in recovery, and that is how to ask for help. We, addicts and alcoholics, we think we have to figure it out. So, here we go, 18, 28, still haven't figured it out, 38, still haven't figured it out, 48, still haven't figured it out. When we finally embrace step one and go, just admit to ourselves, man, if I could have figured it out, I think I'd have done it by now. So maybe it's time for me to stop trying to figure it out. Maybe it's time for me to stop half measuring. It might be a really good time in my life to just give myself over, and that's all surrender means, is giving yourself over to something. I just don't know about the surrender thing. Really? Well, let's look at that. We were talking about earlier this week, we were talking about looking at the evidence, right? Take your feelings out of it. Where's the evidence that we have a hard time surrendering? There's not much. The truth is we surrender all the time. We are constantly surrendering to other people's opinions. We've been surrendering to drugs and alcohol. We surrender to our compulsions, our impulsions. We surrender to instant gratification. We surrender to wanting what we want when we want it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the truth is we already got this surrender thing down. That's a good thing to look at. When you're, and I hope that you are. When you get these resistant mental obsessions going on. I just don't know about this, and we want to debate this thing and argue about that thing. It hasn't helped. It hasn't helped. It doesn't ever get anywhere. There's no evidence that our resistance has gotten us to a better place. But again, it goes back to these needs. It's us trying to satisfy these needs in distorted ways. So in early recovery, this can still be with us. Resist. I got to figure it out. I only want to do these things. I don't think that's important. That doesn't make sense to me. Or I've already done that thing. Or I did it for a week. What else do you want? we tend to think, part of our old thinking is we tend to do things that would be important, but we're doing them for the wrong reasons. Right? I'm not really, whatever, doing my chores around the house because I feel altruistic and I really want to be a good son and helpful to my family. I'm doing chores around the house so that other people will be happy with me and I won't have to get in trouble. See, it's the exact same behavior, but it's wrong thinking. That's what keeps us stuck. Change, as we become transformed, and this is how we do it, is by self-exploration and getting honest with ourselves. You make right choices because you recognize the importance of it. It's part of what is making you you. The minute we start thinking, well, yeah, we kind of begrudgingly, okay, fine. And the reason why it's important to understand that distinction, because it's part of our denial. We have convinced ourselves, and we'll even use it. No, that's not true. I do tons of stuff that I don't want to do. I fulfill a lot of my responsibilities that I don't want to do. But even in those cases, we can be doing them for the wrong reasons. We'll do them to avoid conflict. We'll do them for the validation that comes later. There's always a reward in it, right? When you start living, and your reward is so much greater than that immediate interaction, that attaboy or that validation. The reward is it, as it builds your self-esteem, you become a new person, and so your outlook changes. If we keep cherry picking or convincing ourselves that we're actually working recovery while not being complete about it, you're kidding yourself. You're lying to yourself. And the way I used to look at it with myself is that's literally how I would manipulate myself, right? Because that is what manipulation is. Well, we manipulate ourselves too. We think, oh no, this is good because I can get away with it. No one will say anything about this, and I could go meet with my accountability guys, and they would ask me, hey, how much time did you spend reading whatever the assignment was that week, or did you even do it? Knowing that they're not asking proof, they're going to take my word for it, and I'll go, oh yeah, I read it, when I don't even know where it is, right? But we'll say things because we can get away with it, which obviously is not honest, and it's manipulation, but we don't see it as that. That's how powerful our denial is. We live a life of lies and manipulation, and we can't even identify it. You say, oh man, Miles, you manipulate all the time. I go, what? That's not true. Well, yeah, until change occurs, those are our characteristics. And so here's what's happening when we're stuck in the illusion of recovery is we're totally focused on the externals, right? The things that will make us feel better and look better on paper. And much of the time, they're actually good things. They're positive things. Like let's say like in this environment, it's like, okay, well, we'll focus on the things that are seen, that are observable. So I'm definitely going to go to group, and I'm going to cook when I'm supposed to cook, and I'm going to do my chore when everyone else is doing their chore. I'm going to do some things, I might, if I get an assignment, I'll work on that, et cetera, et cetera. But then some of the other more, they're not subtle suggestions, but that's the way we tend to receive them. We literally just reject them. And we don't even realize we're rejecting them. We're just doing what we've always done. Meaning, with every experience that we ever have, we're immediately picking out the things in that experience that are of interest to us. Now just let that sink in for a minute. Any kind of information that comes our way that makes us feel uncomfortable, it doesn't make sense, isn't of interest, doesn't seem fun, there's no instant gratification, there's no reward in it, we will automatically reject it. But in our minds, because we're doing some of the things some of the time, we really believe, that's I got this, I'm fine, I'm good. And that turns, the illusion of recovery turns into the delusion of recovery, because we can actually pull it off for a while, right? Everybody in here understands that. That's why when you look back at our history, we do have periods of success, always followed by periods of crash. I don't like to call it failure, but it's a crash and burn for sure. But it's not failure. We're addicts and alcoholics. We've got this brain thing going on. And so we can take those failures, if we're willing to learn from them, and we can keep growing. So in the end, it's those things that we used to beat ourselves up about, fail at, ends up being the very things that move us into change. We were just talking about this last Friday. What are y'all grateful for? That you're growing when you're grateful for all the junk in your life. I'm grateful that I got arrested. I'm grateful that I lost my car. I'm grateful the bank took my house. Not because so they're such fun experiences, but because you're growing, you're maturing, and you're recognizing that those were turning points for us, turning opportunities, I'll put it that way. Because there's tons of times where we do those things and we didn't respond well at all. But we're growing, we're recovering. Now, we're not seeking to be recovered, we're recovering. And so it can be very confusing. Think about this. It's like an adage. I think it's even on the board somewhere. The way we tend to measure ourselves is feelings. We even respond to people that way. Hey, how are you doing today? And we'll say, I'm pretty good. I'm fine. We didn't even hear the question. The question was, how are you doing today? And we respond with how we're feeling. This is and we're going to end this with a suggestion on breaking this down in just a simple little formula. But it's just more of what we were talking about last week, where you got to start looking for the evidence. Hey, how are you? Do you think you're doing well in your recovery journey? Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good. I feel good. Okay, well, start looking for the evidence. What does the evidence show? And then be willing to be honest about it. That's really how people change. Because remember, we don't choose denial. Denial chose us. Denial was a survival method. Denial protected us for so long. It helped us to move through horrible failures, huge disappointments, much shameful experiences. And then there's some trauma that we didn't create for ourselves. There's the things that we've received and difficult experiences that we've had. Denial is your brain trying to protect itself. It's not that big a deal. It really isn't that bad. And so it leaves us distorted. Remember, in adolescence, when the brain starts getting assaulted or insulted through trauma and using, your pathways begin to change. They begin to die off. They begin to get severed. So parts of the brain that are supposed to be communicating with other parts of the brain aren't in proper ways. And so denial becomes a huge characteristic that helps us go, oh yeah, I guess, stealing my best friend's dad's wallet, it's not that big a deal. I mean, it's not like, they weren't mad or anything. We base it on feeling somebody else. Well, it was cool because when I got caught, the dad was real cool about it, and he just let me return it, or I got to mow the yard for a couple of weeks to work it off. So because they didn't overreact, we think that our behavior was somewhat acceptable. You see, that's skewed. We don't know how to measure ourselves. We measure ourselves based on feelings. Now, if we'd have gotten, if the reaction to a particular behavior is appropriate for the behavior, then we go the opposite direction. It doesn't sink in like, oh my God, this is a really serious thing. I've got to rethink some things. I've got to quit breaking into people's cars. No, we go to the other extreme where we just blame the world. Oh man, this is just more of the man picking on me, and it's not right, and these people over here did it and they don't ever get harassed, and the cops are always harassing me anyway, and that's distortion. Our brains are so out of whack. So based on that, we shouldn't be doing any thinking right now, right? In early recovery, what do we think? We don't have the capacity to put anything together in any real way. And yet, we will hide behind it. Well, this, and I don't know about this, and I don't know. Exactly, we don't know nothing. I had to get to that point. We've all got to get to that point. I just read it. We got to come to the place where we're willing to go to any length necessary, which means quit thinking. Just follow. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I got trust issues. No, we have trustworthy issues. Just do the things that we're supposed to do, and everything changes. It's so crazy. And some of you guys have had those experiences, or real close to it. That, this is going to sound funny. The dream is real, man. But it doesn't come about the way we think it's supposed to come about. We think that we're just going to take a little bit of this information and a little bit of that information, and we're going to kind of put our own little recovery process together. It just doesn't work. There was a plea. Remember, these guys wrote that book in 1939. There's a plea in that thing that I just read. And I don't remember the details, but he said, we strongly urge you now to get this thing on the first time. You don't have to be one of these guys that's in and out for the next 30 years, which, by the way, will just be another 30 years of more loss, right? We're not going to gain anything until we finally give ourselves over to this simple program of change. We're becoming different. So if I knew how to be different, I'd already done it. We got to quit thinking. And so that's why we can have a lot of confusion in the beginning of early recovery, because we're still bringing that same worldview to the table, and we're trying to make sense of it based on our past experiences. We'll never be able to do it. But if we'll get honest with ourselves and we'll follow new information, then real change will begin to happen. And the fifth and final barrier associated with our denial is that we see ourselves as unique. Think about it. This is just a rhetorical question. I just want you to think about it, because I'm not putting anybody on blast. Everybody's going to grow at their own pace. But this is a great example. Every time we reject something that is taught to us that is part of the recovery solution, but we reject it, what we're believing is that we're unique, right? Well, I don't need to do that one thing. And here's the greatest example that I like to use, because everybody does it, including myself. Read the big book. So every time, and I bring it up many times a week. Read the big book every day. Read a little bit of the big book every day. When you're feeling anxious, read the big book. Right before you go smoke, hit the pause button, read the big book for 2 minutes, and then go smoke. Right? I'm always working that into these verbal suggestions. Pay attention to what you're thinking in that moment when you hear Miles say, read the big book. We're not thinking anything. We're thinking, oh yeah, that big book. But that doesn't apply to me, right? Because that's what we think, because we see ourselves as unique, which just means, I don't need to do all those other things. I'm good. Okay, well that's okay. You can have those kind of thoughts if you're willing to look at that honestly. Right? It's okay to say, you know what, I don't need it. Maybe you don't, but where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that I am good? I don't need those things. I'm good. And then, one of the things that we tend to, especially if you've kind of been at this for a while and you've been trying to get, it's like, I read that book at my last rehab, and I read it in jail, and I read it in this other rehab. I read it. And so now we can believe it just doesn't apply, or I already read it. The problem is we didn't put it together with a complete package before, or we didn't actually follow anything in it. We were kind of joking about it last week. I mean, think about it. It's like, I don't care whether y'all get involved with AA, but that is literally like the landmark book on alcoholism. It's like maybe the most important thing. And don't do what I used to do. Well, I'm an addict. I ain't reading no alcohol book. No, it's the same thing. If you don't have the wherewithal to be able to replace the word alcohol with drug when you read that in a sentence in that book, you're probably not going to make it. That's just resistance. That's just, we will come up with any kind of excuse not to change. But we didn't need any excuses to stay the same. Think about this. These should be like earth-shattering questions that you ponder. Yeah, that's true. I didn't put up any resistance. Hey, come on, we're going to the bar. Heck yeah. Well, wait a minute, I don't have any money. Wait, that's cool. I'm going to get some money. I'll figure it out. I'm going to go sell something, hawk something, steal something, borrow something. What if we could bring just 50% of that enthusiasm to recovery? Man, I don't know about recovery, but yeah, shoot, help me, give me there, take me, teach me, instruct me. What do you think that, how do you see yourself in relation to the things I just talked about, in the last 2 minutes? Do you see it? You should see it, but are you willing to explore it? That's the big thing. If you're willing to explore it, you're going to fly. If the alternative is we just stay in, it's not that big a deal. That one thing, it doesn't make sense to me. That other thing, I've already done it. This thing, we're not baking a cake. We're trying to save our own lives. And if you don't think that it'll kill you, it will. Nobody ever thinks, I'm not going to be one of the guys that die. And then someone really close to you will die, and we'll still think it. Nah, I'm not. It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. That's that uniqueness. We got to shatter that. Why not? Where's the evidence that it's not going to get you? In fact, there's overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The evidence shows that if I don't get a handle on this thing, I'm most likely to die. But that's what denial does for us. Denial helps us to avoid reality so that we don't have to feel bad. Man, if I've got a disease that I really believe is going to kill me, I don't like the way that makes me feel, so I'm just going to pretend I don't have it. That's what denial is. That's what we're doing in alcoholism and addiction. Here's a bigger list of those externals that we tend to present. Look, I am changing. Look, I am taking things seriously. We want to get the car and the job, and we may start going to church, and we get a new home, and I'm paying some bills, and I may have a lot of conversations about self-improvement, but not really doing much towards it. It's, and I used to work my family too, man, and my mom, bless her heart, she would get so excited. She'd be like, oh my God, you just went to one of those meetings again? Did you go to that men's meeting today? Yeah, I did. Oh, I'm so proud of you, honey. what I didn't tell her, and this is in the early beginning of my journey. What I didn't tell her is I basically slept through it. The rest of them went off for coffee to finish the discussion afterwards, but I didn't go because I'm so busy. I didn't tell her I wasn't really engaged in it. I literally just showed up. And every time I went, I would always call her or go see her. Think about that for a minute. I wasn't doing that for the right reasons. I was doing it to manipulate my mom. Wow. But even in my own mind, even in our own mind, we go, no, but I am doing these right things. But we're not doing them for the right reasons. We're still doing them out of the perspective of these basic needs that we've learned to meet in a distorted way. We've got to learn how to meet these needs in healthy ways, and the way that tends to come about is completeness. We got to really take seriously developing mentally, developing spiritually, developing emotionally, developing, what was the other one? Did I say physically? Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I guess that's all four. And next week we're gonna really break that down in group. But just as an overview, and because we've all done it, we've all had days or weeks or past experiences where we really believed, I'm doing good. This is good. I got this. And then boom, we relapse the next week and end up so confused. What the heck just happened? But I was doing so good, right? We always say the same thing. Well, what does good look like? Were we really doing good, or were we just feeling good? Were we doing enough things that made us feel good? And since we have a history of measuring our progress based on feelings, yes, we believed that to be doing good. But we weren't doing good. We were feeling good because we do some things some of the time. And remember, in alcoholism and addiction, half measures won't get it. If you're like a normie and you don't have a drinking or drugging problem, then yeah, we could probably get by with some half measures. At least we're not going to self-destruct. And you probably even know some people that kind of, my grandfather used to say half-ass a few things. And I will own that too. I've certainly half-assed a few things in my life. And the result is a low quality result. Well, with us, if we half measure our recovery, we don't get a low quality result. We get zero. We get back into our addiction. That's what the big book's talking about. Half measures avail us nothing. Half measures don't avail us half. So we've got to be all in, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Here's how you know that that you're heading in that direction. You're starting to get more easily irritated. You're noticing what's wrong with everybody else, and you're paying less attention to what's going on with you. Your anxiety's starting to go up. We're starting to rule dodge, meaning, we're dodging rules. We're coming up with reasons why it's okay to not follow this rule, or I shouldn't have to do this thing, or, rules and laws and just kind of acceptable society things. I think he's in the back. Were you going to get that? Were you going to shut him up? Yeah, I think he's on the back. We got a barking animal. We need to shut it down. So, again, it's all part of, we talk about, don't follow feelings, but we have to start identifying feelings. So when we start feeling irritable and restless and discontent and anxious and all this stuff, whatever, depressed, sad, it doesn't mean we need to change anything. It just means we need to get honest with how we're feeling and then follow whatever that recovery principle is to move through it. What we've done in the past is we'll have the feeling and then we try to change something so we can have a different feeling. That's the number one red flag check engine light, is your feelings. but it's no longer the guide. It can't guide us anymore. It's just the check engine light. What your new measuring stick needs to be is the behavior, the part that we can control. Right? We can, I mean, that, think about it. It's, your life can be so much more simple when you realize that the very measuring stick you need to use with yourself is literally the only thing in the world you actually have control of. But it only works if you're willing to be honest with yourself. And that's the kicker. I mean, it's in the big book. You know, there are those among us who seem to be constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They're not many, but they're out there. It's not you guys. You have the capacity to be honest. Now what remains is are you willing? Are you willing? And once you're willing to be honest with yourself, it's on. You can go make whatever life you want for yourself and be a productive member of society. Okay, so really quickly, when we're talking about a balance, and I promise we'll get way more into this next week, but if we're talking about a complete foundation, it's not enough to just go 150 miles an hour in one direction. What are those important other areas? So be thinking about mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional, and know exactly which tasks or which behaviors that you should be engaged in that will help you grow in those areas. And that we'll get very specific, but you know, like I say all the time, your daily routine or your weekly routine here in this environment is already set up for that. If we'll just follow that and actually follow it, then everything gets balanced and worked out. But what we tend to do, you know, we're like, well, yeah, it's like, there's like 12 suggestions. So when I'm not sure, when I don't have a specific obligation and I'm not sure what to do, then there's 12 suggestions on the paper, and we won't pick any of them. And then we can't figure out why our anxiety is going up, why our restlessness is increasing, and that's the half measure stuff. So, you know, just like in everything else, the whole point of even presenting this information is to become aware of it. Man, I'll tell you what, when that veil begins to lift, you know, you ever heard the old saying, a person doesn't know how much pain you're in until you're no longer in pain, because we adapt, right? As humans, we're masterful adapters. You know, it's kind of like the boiling the frog slowly. Well, that's what we've done over the course of our lifetime. You know, we can kind of respond in our survival mode, and we can adapt to this, and oh man, you know, my car just got repossessed, and it's horrible then. But then we kind of slowly figure out how to ride the bus, or, you know, call friends for rides, and, you know, we adapt. We're not adapting upward, we adapt downward. And then we gain a comfort zone with that until our whole life is just in shambles. We've got nothing but loss, and we don't have a clue how to get out of it. And part of the problem is we don't even recognize it as that big a deal. But it's a huge deal. And the way that veil begins to lift is we just do it anyway. You know, we just follow this new course of action anyway. Just follow it anyway. It says, read the big book every day. Okay, fine, I'll read the big book every day. It says, you know, chase spirituality. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Chase spirituality. I don't know, something about God, perhaps. I put some examples on here. Spirituality is starts with you personally making a commitment to that every day. You know, when was the last time you grabbed a ice cold Dr. Pepper and sat underneath a shade tree for just 5 minutes and just just emptied your mind. When was the last time that happened? That's a spiritual experience. When was the last time you just took a walk and you paid attention to not what was wrong, but the beauty in nature? That's a spiritual experience. These are things that we'll kind of sometimes fall into and appreciate it when we do. But we won't make it part of our living. And that's why we end up relapsing. Because we'll do 150 miles an hour in the stuff that helps us to feel better, but we don't have a balance. We don't have a complete balance. We're running out of time, so I'll just bulletproof this in case anybody on YouTube is taking notes. Emotional things, emotional foundational things that we should do every day. It needs to become part of our life. Is being honest with ourselves, learning how to be realistic, how to just let reality be what it is. It doesn't mean we have to agree with whatever that experience is, but we don't have to change it. The Big Book refers to this as living life on life's terms. Just allowing life to be what it is. Oh my God, there's no internet connection. I don't have an internet connection right now. Oh my God. Okay, well, and that's just a life experience. I don't have an internet connection. What else can you do instead right now? We'll have a normal life experience and we'll totally lose it. Right? We'll spend the next 4 hours trying to figure out why we don't have an internet connection when we could have just gone and done some other stuff productive and then check back. Right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm still human too. I get caught up in some of this stuff too sometimes, but because the veil has been lifted, I can self-correct pretty quickly without giving my stuff away. On the emotional box is managing your emotions. It doesn't mean you're not having them, but it just means you're recognizing that you're having them. Wow, I'm kind of sad today. I don't really know why, or I'm irritated today, or my feelings are hurt. Okay, well, you explore that, but you keep doing the next right thing, and focusing on yourself. And I don't mean self-centeredness. I mean, what's important for me in order to grow, and we focus on those things. And none of this stuff sounds a lot of fun, but what happens is these are the elements that will change us, and then everything's fun. You enjoy living life. It's good to just be breathing. You can enjoy any mundane experience because you're no longer looking at the experience to be your entertainment. That's crazy. So getting back to, you don't know how much pain you were in until you're no longer in pain. The more that veil begins to lift, the more you realize, oh my God, I have been in darkness most of my life. Even though we can have amazing experiences and do some amazing things, but the self-destruction pattern that we've been in for so long just always keeps us kind of like right here on an emotional, mental, physical, spiritual level, when we could actually live here on an emotional, physical, spiritual, I always forget the last one, mental level. Okay, so what does mental mean? How do we grow mentally? What do we need to establish in our mental foundation? And that's actually spending time reading recovery material, or like we were talking about yesterday, it doesn't have to have the word drug or alcohol in it. There's so much self-help information. We've got bookshelves full of it. We can have conversations about it. We can evaluate what we've been learning. We can take notes after the notes. We can journal. We're exploring on a mental level knowledge in things that didn't normally interest us. That's a huge one. Following instructions is mental, right? That increases our mental capacity. Just following instructions. You'd think, no, that's what robots do. No. That's what intelligent, well-rounded people do. Because it comes with humility. It comes with an understanding that we don't know much of anything, right? If I knew how to fix the world, I sure as heck wouldn't be bankrupt, childless, can't see my children, not paying my bill, We don't know. We don't bring much to the table, but we can. By the way, if you haven't figured it out, that's the tragedy of addiction. We have so much talent to offer the world, and as soon as we get stuck in this, forget it. We're not sharing that with anybody. But that's part of the responsibility. You have a responsibility to develop in a well-rounded way. You weren't, I won't start preaching, but you're here for a reason. And you have a very specific set of skills and talents and ideas and creativity that is intended to be shared with the world. And when we get stuck all up in ourselves and we're questioning this and we're debating that and we're thinking right here in this little teeny tiny box and we're just wanting what we want when we want it, and that's before we start drinking. And then we start drinking, and then you're not offering anything to the world. But we want to, and the reason you want to is because that is you. That's right, you do want to. You have a desire to share what you already have. That's how you were made. So invest in it. That's the point. Invest in it. Slowing down is part of a mental foundation. And taking your thoughts captive, bringing it into a mental realm. I think in early recovery we tend to think, oh man, I'm very mental, because we spend a lot of time mentally obsessing about things. I'm talking about expanding that beyond yourself. And we quit thinking about what we want, what we should have, what we shouldn't have to do, and we start thinking about, well, what am I supposed to be giving? We quit thinking about what we're supposed to be getting, and we start thinking about what we should be giving. And part of denial and resistance in that area is, we just go all or nothing. Well, I don't have anything to offer. Well, now you're just lying. That's a lie. That's how we manipulate ourselves. You see, all this stuff, it comes out, maybe it can sound complicated because we talk about so many details, but it all comes down to the same stuff. We lost or probably never developed truly who we're supposed to be long time ago. And we definitely proven to ourselves that living that way, the way we created, didn't work out. But now here we are, and if we'll take advantage of this opportunity to become who we were made to be, then the rest of your life, you're going to fly. I'm not saying you're not going to have some difficulties, but nothing compared to what we've had. Okay, on a spiritual level, just being quiet and still. And I don't mean, I can be quiet and still. Look, I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to be quiet and still. But we're fidgeting and our mind is racing. That's not stillness. That's just pretending to be still. No, emptying out. My favorite one on here is under the spiritual is the meditation part. Oh, I don't know, man. I don't do well with meditation. We are experts at meditation. Meditation simply means thinking a thought over and over and over, or thoughts. You're thinking about something over and over and over and over and over again. That's all meditation is. We got that down. We bring so much mental obsession to the table. Well, now, as part of your foundation, your completeness, we move from the counterproductive mental obsessions, and we get to call it meditation. Imagine if you could, you know, in fact, I'm going to give you all some suggestions next week when we break this down, but it's just thinking thoughts over and over. And I'm not talking about mantras and humming and all that other stuff, some new age stuff, but just being quiet and still and thinking about things that you're grateful for every day. Thinking about the people in your life that you really appreciate. Not as an exercise, on a daily basis. It seems like a lot. You know, we can say, oh man, I'm so grateful for my kids. And so expand on that. Why? Well, I'm supposed, right, that's the right thing. No. Go deeper. Why? What is it about my children that I'm so grateful for? And is it, who are you grateful to? You know, that's what I'm talking about, is you should have every day in your daily routine time where you are just shutting everything off and being still and quiet and allowing yourself to enter into much deeper thinking than we're accustomed to. It's just not that hard. You just have to be willing to do it. Keep asking yourself questions. You know, well, I really appreciate my family. Okay, why? And the reason why these follow-up questions with yourself are so important, because it forces you to identify it. It moves you in from feeling to evidence. You know, well, I really appreciate my family. Why? Well, it's because they're my family. Okay, keep going. Well, because they love me? No, still in feelings. Get into evidence. Because my mom, and she teaches me stuff, and she tells me no when I wanted to hear yes, and she doesn't take my crap anymore, and my brother who never gave up on me and would do anything, but he would also hold me accountable, and he would tell me the truth, and I used to hate his guts, but now I see he was loving me. And think about this for a minute. Again, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I'm trying to get your juices flowing. What else do you have to do? That's the whole point of this environment, is to take what we're learning and apply it right now, not next week, not when you feel like it, not when you leave, not when, on a daily basis. And we leave plenty of space throughout the day for you to go, okay, that's your role, is to go, okay, my God time, my meditation time is going to be every morning at 9 o'clock. And then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do some physical stuff at this time, and I'm going to do some mental stuff at this time, and I'm going to do spiritual stuff, and so forth and so on. But that's us cherry picking. Right? We don't see the significance of it. It sounds hard. I don't want to do it. I don't see the difference. I don't see well, we're going to keep relapsing. If you really want different, we have to do different. You know what? There's so many sayings like that. Nothing changes if nothing changes. I remember the first time I heard that. It made so much sense to me. I was like, oh, well, yeah, duh. I just didn't know what to do different. And it took me a while before I got willing to learn what to do different. But then once you become willing to do different, oh man, I mean, it's done. You're going to be empowered in your own life. I don't want to skip past the whole solution, but I'll give you an example talking about, and we'll leave it at this. So, if we're used to measuring our progress based on our feelings, and tend to get it wrong. Right? It's like, hey, how do you feel? Or you're asking yourself, or you're just thinking, you know, things are going good, and you're feeling pretty good about things, and you know, how am I doing today? Well, I feel good. I've done this, and I've done that, and I've done this, and I've done that. But if you're not honest with yourself, you'll leave out important things. You know, well, I was supposed to do this other thing, but I haven't done that yet. And I was supposed to do this other thing, and I haven't done that. What you'll find is, when you really start getting honest with yourself, the days, and I'm talking about early recovery, like this period. The days that you believe that you're doing really well because you're feeling really well typically tend to be the days where you haven't really done much, like behaviorally, productively. But then it's also the flip coin. Days where you maybe don't feel so good and you're being down on yourself and you feel like, man, I'm such a loser and I'm just not doing much. I don't feel good today, therefore I must not be doing good today, tend to be the opposite. It's like, well, did you make your bed today? Yeah, well, yeah. Did you take a shower today? Yeah. Did you eat breakfast? Yeah. Have you spent any time with God today? Yeah. Well, a little bit. Yeah, in the yard. Okay. It sounds to me like you're doing great. You see, you start basing your progress on what you're doing or how you're doing, not how you're feeling. Because our feelings are no gauge. Our feelings has been we hide behind our feelings. That's our defense mechanism. And if you stay focused on that, it will keep you chasing feelings the rest of your life. That's how we got here. Chasing feelings. Just feelings. And that's why we cherry pick. We've developed the ability to cherry pick like no other. I like this, I like that. Oh, I don't do that. No, I don't. You'll never catch me doing that. No. Well, why? Well, because the truth is because it's uncomfortable. There's no reward in it for me. I don't see the significance of it. Well, of course I wouldn't see the significance of it. I've been putting poison on my brain for 40 years. Or whatever. Whatever honesty you need to follow those thoughts up with. That's what it looks like to get brutally honest with yourself. The illusion of recovery is just that. It is an illusion. It is how we are wrongly perceiving our own progress. It's like it just comes down to behavior. Are you doing the next right thing as best you can? Yeah. And I'm not talking about just working the schedule every day. Don't get stuck on that. I'm talking about, are you thinking about the things that we're talking about? Are you fulfilling those responsibilities to yourself? They're not to me. Are you fulfilling those personal responsibilities to yourself in the next 15 minutes, like we were talking about, those little 15-minute boxes? Or are you half measuring? Do you come sit in group and sort of kind of tune in and tune out? Or do you come to group, pay attention, take notes, that's doing good? Or do you just kind of feel your way through it? Do you do some of the things, some of the time, based on how you feel? Or do you try to do most of the things as best you can because you recognize it as a responsibility? It's really crazy, and it sounds so... It can sound kind of, elementary, very elementary. And it is, because that's where we're stuck. It took me a while to understand this too. I fought it like tooth and nails. You got, I know, in all your all's resistance, over your time periods, is nothing, man. I'm surprised my people just didn't kick me out, because I just wanted to debate everything. And I could, for the most part. I wanted to argue about this and argue about that, and I needed full answers on this, and I needed a full definition of this, and I needed to know, and then I would compare it to other people, and well, this guy's not doing that, and this guy's not doing that, and I darn near, relapsed over all of it. I literally tried to leave. I called my brother and said, "Oh my God, this place is crazy. These people are idiots. They don't know what they're doing." And the moment of truth, man, it saved my life. I didn't recognize it then. My brother's like, "Wow, man, I am so sorry you're having to deal with that. I ain't coming to get you." Click. And it finally forced me to actually do something different. And that's all I want you guys to do. Different. I mean, it's not a no-brainer. I mean, it is a no-brainer. If I keep doing what I've been doing, it's a pretty good likelihood, i.e. scientific, that I will continue to get what I've always gotten. That's just logic. But And if I'm happy with that, cool, I'll keep doing that. But if you're not happy with that, and you're obviously not because you're here, so if I'll begin to do something different, and then something else different, and then something else different, and then something else different, it is also scientific, logical, that I will then get a different result. Whoa. That's why recovery is not a hit or miss thing. And there's people out there that tell you that. Some of you guys may have heard it. It's just not. We're either willing to do different things on a consistent basis, and we will get it, or we're not. That's it. It's that simple. I know we started late and kind of went over a little bit, but I want you guys to be chewing on this, especially this part here, and a balance: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. And we'll talk about next week. We'll talk about what it really means, what it should look like in your own life. It's your balance. It's not mine. I'll give you some ideas on things that I develop in my own foundation, but it's got to be your foundation. And some of them will be similar, right? We'll have things that look the same, but your spiritual development doesn't have to look like my spiritual development. The things that improve you on a mental level aren't necessarily things that impact me, or emotional, or physical, or whatever. I don't. I probably eat more sweets than I should, and I'll never. Well, not never, but and I eat a lot of greasy foods. But I try to exercise and stay very physically active a lot. On the other hand, you might be very particular about the foods that you eat, but you'll never exercise. It's what it is for you. What kind of foundation you need to build in a complete way to have a new life. That's what we're after, a new life. Do you guys... dinner was awesome, by the way. And I just took a little bite right before I got to go eat now. I don't know how long it took, but you guys want to share anything? What... Any bells and whistles, or you just kind of late, you just worn out?
Now, when you say evidence, you mean evidence as in like your actions, paying attention to what you're doing in that moment as you do it?
Well, I hate to say judge, but yeah, as you judge yourself, as you measure yourself, you're thinking, we start thinking, man, I got this, or I'm having a good time, or I'm doing well, I'm having a good day. For example, well, am I really? If I'm living up to responsibilities, then that's a safe, honest self-assessment. But here's a great example. I could wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I can drive straight down to the shelter and volunteer all day long, and I'm cooking food, and I'm cleaning for them, and I'm helping feed like 1,000 homeless people, and everybody's patting me on the back, and I'm feeling good because I'm doing this really wonderful thing. And then I go to church, and I get the little the old lady list off the board, and I go mow a couple of yards for some sweet old church ladies, and I get back home, and it's like, man, I've just had this awesome day. But then the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's my boss saying, well, why didn't you come to work today? See, but I wanted to do all this other stuff, and it made me feel good. It's not about the other stuff. We can do good things, but that wasn't what I should have done that day. What I should have done that day is go to work. That was my commitment. And so that's the point. And we tend to compensate that when we do this kind of 150 miles an hour in this area, and then our mind allows us to just kind of accept that as enough. It's like, well, man, I'm working 80 hours a week, and I'm making good money, and the bills are getting paid, and my kids are getting new shoes, and they're getting ready to take a cool trip that they've always wanted to take, and those are good things, and we can feel good about it, but whatever, I still haven't, I'm still 2 months behind on my car payment, and I should have been paying my child support, and I should have It's about looking at everything in an honest way, in a complete way, and then being honest with yourself about it. Am I really doing good? I know that I feel good, but am I doing good? And if you're doing the next right thing, if you're living up to your personal responsibilities, not just the things you want to do, but you're living up to the responsibilities, which is 80% of things you don't want to do, then the answer to the question is yes. You're doing real good. You're doing real good. And there's tangible things and there's intangible things, and that's what we'll get into, next week. We could do it. And remember, we're not talking about building a life of perfection. This is just how healthy people live. And once you establish it, just the mindset and the habit of choosing responsibilities over feelings, it becomes second nature. It becomes you pretty quickly, because that's how we were actually designed before we distorted everything, at whatever, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I don't know how old you are, but and I'm not good with math, so I can't just go straight back to 8 years old. But okay, that would make you 13. I'm just kidding. Okay, we're done. Thanks, people, for watching on YouTube.
Stop recording.
And we are out. Yeah, I went way over. Yeah, stop recording, stop streaming, and we'll be back next week. Okay, I see the camera. This new camera that Matt brought us is actually